This is a new series I want to start. Sure, up until this point, my channel has been mostly about video games, my reactions to things, playing some games, and the like. But video gaming is only one of my many hobbies. And among them, I also really enjoy tabletop gaming, especially tabletop RPGs such as Dungeons & Dragons. While my experience with D&D itself is rather limited, one-off and a short campaign in Pathfinder, and that's basically it, I have spent a significant amount of time in other RPGs, namely Legend of the Five Rings, Shadowrun, and World of Darkness. And I have a group that I play with regularly, though considering said group watches my channel, this is nothing new for them. So that's the plan, and without much further ado, let's begin with a short tale from my group's most recent Shadowrun campaign. The first story I'll share will be a little bit easier to explain because of its relative lightness and mechanics, as well as the sheer absurdity of the experience. My character is Jae Gong, a human classified as a street samurai, but realistically I'm more of a cross between a thief and a monk, as my character focuses more on stealth first and foremost, being relatively squishy. Typically, he's meant for more infiltration and recon. We also have a troll, a magic user, a decker, another infiltrator who doubles as the face, and a rigger. The particular mission we're talking about involved the seizure and extractions of what was only revealed to us as important data from a biological research project that was being shipped from one warehouse to another via a convoy of 3 trucks. We were tasked with figuring out which truck had the shipment, as well as getting it to a safe location for extraction. We eventually concluded the best idea was to determine which trucks had boxes within them and which one had the security team tasked with ensuring the boxes reached their destination safely, and somehow get one member of our team each to commandeer, quote-unquote, each truck. My character, Jay, and the other infiltrator, Ericus, opted to sneak aboard by impersonating the drivers of the front 2 trucks, which had shipping crates in them, though Jay hit a bit of a snag and had to use a little more force to take the place of the real driver. Dashuk, the troll, however, decided it would be much easier to disguise himself as part of the security team in the back truck, and since we had a decker who could easily modify the rosters of the trucks, that was easily accomplished. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, if he had a decker, why did Jay run into trouble? Well, that would be because I have terrible luck with dice rolls, and his SIN, or in other words fake identification, got compromised after a failed check. That didn't happen with the other 2, which is kind of frustrating, but realistically, Jay isn't the star of this show. Anyway, we also had our decker reprogram the GPS path on the trucks so it would lead us to our extraction point rather than the chosen path that it was originally programmed for. The only part of the plan we weren't exactly clear on was Dashuk's plan for handling the security team. Dashuk, and through him his player Parker, merely said, "I'll handle it." Not long after the convoy began moving out, people within the trucks started to realize that something was wrong. Each truck's remaining personnel seemed to say in unison, "Wait a minute, this isn't the path they're supposed to go on." Jay feigned ignorance, shrugging and saying that perhaps they discovered a shortcut or a safer path. Ericus tased his passenger, but Dashuk. Now, one thing to note from Parker, Dashuk's player, was the fact that he'd shown early on in his campaign his lack of fear of injury for his character. And he did so with good reasons, considering his character's backstory. At this point, the following actions should not have been a surprise. Now you're probably thinking, what, he took advantage of the closed space and got up and shot everyone? No. That would have been way too predictable. Instead, at some point, he had asked the GM if using a person as cover would be reasonable, and the GM said he would just roll with it. So Dashuk grabbed the guy sitting next to him as, with the other arm, he dropped a grenade, muttering, "Weapons malfunction," in perhaps the least enthusiastic voice imaginable, like less enthusiastic than I was able to do just then. What happened next seems pretty predictable. All on board died, right? Like, you can't survive that, even with cover, right? Maybe. The GM did amplify damage because the truck was armored, so it would not be unrealistic to believe that everyone in the truck was instantly turned to mush. In fact, most of the enemies were either killed or knocked unconscious almost instantly. Dashuk, however, managed to survive and cling to consciousness. Barely, mind you, Afterwards, a stiff breeze might have knocked him out. But he decided at any rate the best course of action would be to play dead, as some Lone Star, basically privatized police force, officers were already in pursuit of the convoy. At this point, Dashik was in no condition to do anything but somehow avoid being sent to the morgue by mistake. While Jay, Ericus, and the rest of the team were stuck dealing with the oncoming police officers, Leilani, the magic user, played by my wife Karen, made her way back to the scene of the crime to see if she could somehow sneak Dashik away. It took some persuasion and maybe a little magic, but she was able to convince one of the officers that Dashik was her adopted son, and she would like to give him a proper burial. This could have not worked, but thankfully, I guess, Dashik's identification was destroyed in the explosion, making it impossible to run adoption records. So, some magic, some heavy lifting, and a lost job for a Lone Star officer later, and Dashik and Leilani were safely breaking into Jay's apartment to lay low. After all was said and done, nobody, not even the GM, knew how to react. As this had been the third time Dashik had been severely injured in a battle by tanking or soaking damage that the GM had planned for the entire party, and this had also been the third time he'd come out of it more or less fine. Considering the game is still ongoing, the jury is still out on whether or not his luck will continue. Either way, this wasn't the first crazy off-the-wall thing that happened in our Shadowrun campaign, and it probably won't be the last. So with that in mind, guys, thanks for tuning in and listening to this story, and there will be more to follow, so if you liked it, go ahead and subscribe and stay tuned for more crazy RPG adventures. And in the comments, why don't you guys share your own stories about weird things that have happened? One of my favorite things about tabletop gaming is hearing the crazy stuff that happens to other people, crazy stories that happen, dice rolls that go wrong, dice rolls that go right. It's an experience you can't really get anywhere else, and I have a lot of love for that. But at any rate, thanks for tuning in, and have a great afternoon.